Yo, what's up guys? John Boogle here. Today we have the Manic Dark Guide, Unjust War, Deadly. Let's hop straight into the lineup explanation. Now, like I've been doing for all these new updated guides, let's break down the lineup into unit roles. This way it'll be much easier to know what to replace for what unit, or to substitute a unit that fulfills the same role, as nothing here is static and can be replaced. As always, let's first start with the meat shields, and Manic Dark is a stage where meat shield levels do matter a bit more than the other stages, but as always, the bare minimum is level 30 or level 20 Crazed. Manic Eraser will be your best friend in this stage. Stuff like Haniwa is usable here, but if you have your two erasers higher leveled, this will be much easier. So 3 to 4 meat shields is what I recommend for this stage. Now, Manic Dark is a stage that is very reliant on crowd control units. Yes, you can brute force the stage if you do have high enough levels, but we're going in with baseline level 30 units, and crowd control is especially important in this stage because you do get pushed very hard. Sanzo being the ultimate crowd control unit in this stage because it does counter floating enemies very easily, which will be your main issue in the stage. Now, things like Row Cat, I Cat, they can work here. The thing is, that's not something I would solely rely on in this stage because they're inconsistent. Very inconsistent. Sanzo, however, is very consistent and will get you the reliable crowd control you need. So yes, iCat, Row is an option. Not saying it doesn't work, but in all of the hundreds of runs I've done in this stage, I found that iCat and Row aren't really consistent compared to Sanzo. Now, if you have any great crowd control Ubers, that can work great in this stage to either support Sanzo or iCat if you decide to use this here, or even replace them if you have powerful enough units. Like, a lot of the anti-red Ubers can make this stage a pretty massive joke, and not just anti-red, even the universal crowd control units, stuff like Kronos, makes this stage an absolute joke. But anti-floating, anti-red is what you want to aim for in this stage. What makes Sanzo the ultimate unit is because it has an AoE crowd control, which means if you get overrun, which you will get overrun in this stage, Sanzo could handle it with its AoE crowd control area of effect, unlike things like Necromancer, which is single target, or Witch Cat. So to wrap up crowd control, aim for AoE crowd control units that are consistent. Bring more than one crowd control unit if you need to. And remember that you can always replace Bahamut and Wolf here in this example lineup with one of your crowd control Ubers. Now, let's talk about another very important thing to have in this stage: your attackers. Because yes, your crowd control units are there to help you hold ground and effectively stall units. That will all be pointless if you can't actually kill them while they are being crowd controlled. Now, thankfully, we are playing AC after Courier. The old guide 5 years ago didn't have units like Courier in existence, which has essentially become the main attacker in this stage, besides Cameraman, which is still just as important. So yes, the two attackers I highly recommend here is Cameraman and Courier. Courier has LD, is very strong against raids. Cameraman, super effective against floating, cost efficient, and a very nice stackable attacker. And both of them have AoE, which will tremendously help kill the onslaught of spam of Shy Boys in the stage. Now, things like Dragon Cat, Bahamut, Wolf here is for more the later half of the stage, where you're going to be essentially in a 1v1 with Manic Dark with the occasional Shy Boy that comes around. That's when you do want to prepare to have at least 1 or 2 attackers that outrange Manic Dark. So things like Dragon Cat is nice here. Wolf is just used as a general attacker here with that chance to knock back as just the bonus crowd control as well. Replacements for attackers, there are millions of them here. Of course, all the general ranged attackers: Paris, Drama Cats, Volter Cat, Crazed UFO, Crazed Legs, Pizza Cat. The list goes on. There are millions of general ranged AoE attackers, and it becomes billions when we talk about Ubers. So don't stress. Oh no, I don't have Cameraman. Oh no, I don't have Courier. There are many replacements for attackers that can fulfill the same role. Because once again, we aim to knock down unit roles. It's very rare you'll come across a stage where you need exact specific units. The beauty of Battle Cats is being able to craft your own lineup and still do the stage the same way, or still being able to execute the strategy. Speaking of, let's hop into the strategy explanation. Power-ups I'd recommend for this stage is Rich Cat and Cat CPU. Sniper is optional, not needed. Same with Rich Cat as well as CPU. They just give you an easier time. Now, the essential strategy of this stage is to hold and cover as much ground as possible in the beginning. The beginning of the stage is essentially what makes and breaks your run. This Manic stage is a lot more difficult than the others because it is not a base hit stage. Manic Dark is out the second you start the stage, so you have no time to build up your cash properly or prepare. You have to cover ground quickly. So as soon as the stage starts, you want to start sending out your crazed walls, manic walls, regular erasers, whatever stallers you are using to hold as much ground as possible. Otherwise, you will be overrun when the waves of spam starts happening. Like even this initial push of these two shy boys here is what can break your run if it does push you back too far. The reason you don't want to lure too close or give up too much ground in the stage is because when the bun push arrives with the shy boys, they can really push back your units, attackers, meat shields, whatever you have. Even your crowd control units can become overwhelmed. Let's say they don't hit their procs, like Sanzo here. If Sanzo fails a certain amount of procs in a row, there's a very high chance you'll just get overrun. The thing about losing ground is you also lose room for error. If a situation like Sanzo procs not happening occurs, if we gained a bunch of ground or held a bunch of ground early in the stage, we can afford some mishaps to happen, some RNG to happen. But like in this situation, let's say another Shy Boy wave is arriving right here in this very moment. If we fail the Sanzo proc, or if the Shy Boys just happen to push through, we don't have the ground here to cover for those errors or those occurrences, because Manic Dark will be slamming the base, Neandem in the back will be hitting the base, and then it's over. But yeah, you can see, this is why early in the stage, you want to get your ground and try to hold it as long as you can. Because when this push arrives with the Bun and the Shy Boy waves, if you don't have your stack of crowd control units ready, if you don't have your attackers decently stacked up, you're eventually going to get pushed over. And the reason it becomes so difficult is because eventually you have such little ground to work with in the stage. The enemies are already hitting your base. Now, the way I would go about using your legends and or ubers in the stage, initially, early in the stage, I recommend just using one of your legends and or ubers. Like in this example run, we used Wolf pretty early in the stage to just maintain some of the Shy Boys, get some extra DPS down. But when this Bun wave arrives, this is when you want to send out your other uber or legend. Let's say this is your nuker. This is where you would send out your nuker and try to nuke out all of these enemies at once. Now, despite there being lots of spam of enemies, that means it provides a lot of cash, right? Well, that doesn't completely eliminate the process of cash management in the stage. If your units are outranged by Manic Dark and there's no Shy Boys and there's no Buns in the way, don't send out your crowd control units if you don't need them. Save them for when the Shy Boy arrives. Don't just send Cameraman and Sanzo straight into Manic Dark's attack for no reason at all. That's why we have units like Dragon Cat here in this example run to hold ground while also being able to outrange Manic Dark, because the second half of the stage is essentially a 1v1 with Manic Dark here, and this is when the occasional Shy Boy and Red Seal comes along, and you have to send out your Sanzo or Cameraman for when that happens. Not to be constantly sending out Cameraman, Courier, Sanzo every single chance you get, but only for these occasional Shy Boys that come around once you get to this point of the stage. Now, if you don't have a decent dragon stack here, there's a chance things can go wrong. If you don't have Sniper Cat power up, eventually Manic Dark will push forward hard enough. So units like Wolf, even Little Nye in this stage does help with that extra little chance of that crowd control happening to help you. but it's not something you rely on. Sniper Cat power-up is the power-up I recommended for the stage because you can consistently rely on that knockback unless you're using Ubers that can actually knock back traitless or crowd control traitless enemies. But yeah, here, this is where the long fight begins, the second half of the stage. 1v1 Manic Dark. Neandem does become a bit of an issue once you start pushing up, because you push up, you have a massive dragon stack, they just all get one shot by Neandem, then you have to reset, build up your stack again. It gets very annoying in the stage, but that's why having Courier is so nice here for the second half of the stage as well as the first half, is because Courier can actually use Manic Dark or some of the peons that go in front of Manic Dark as leverage to actually hit Neandem in the back, and that can help you kill Neandem much quicker, or even just have that extra damage knockback that just happened, like right there for example. Another unit that's very effective in that area is Crazed Legs, or any other waiver unit that you might have, as well as other LD units. Does help out a lot in this half of the stage. This half of the stage is very similar to Manic Eraser in the way that I would actually recommend you to cycle your Ubers and or Legends in this half of the stage, not stack them up, because in the case you do start to get pushed back, you have that backup on recharge at all times, just as an extra security. But if you're using the help of units like Dragon Cat, of course this part of the level becomes much more easier and quicker. Now, units like can help in this stage with that bounty talent if you do have it. Otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend it here because single target isn't the way you want to go in this stage. Using all the AoE general attackers, it's much more effective, like Pizza, Paris, Drama Cats, Voltor Cat, Crazy UFO, hell, even Chill Cat if you're desperate. You can see in this example, lineup and run here, we're more so relying on crowd control than having that nuker like Crazed Bahamut, which is another way to do the stage, but the most effective way is to have a mix of both, your crowd control units plus the nuker and or strong attackers to kill off all the units that are being crowd controlled, because usually you don't want to spend too much time fighting against all of these stacked up enemy units. But with units such as Courier, which is very powerful in this stage, you can go in this stage with just a full crowd control mindset and let Courier and Camera just handle the rest. So I would say having a nuker like Crazed Bahamut or like Thundia, for example, or an anti-floating nuker like Windy is not needed as much as crowd control units in this stage. But of course, that's relative to your attackers. If you don't have Courier, you don't have Cameraman, maybe you need more powerful attackers. Maybe substitute in 2 nukers. But generally, crowd control does win it in the stage, because if your crowd control is powerful enough and you're able to stall the enemies basically forever, you're eventually gonna kill them anyways. But that's only if your crowd control is super effective and has pretty much 100% uptime. Otherwise, you will slowly get pushed back and eventually lose. So try to find that balance for you. Maybe you do need more crowd control. Maybe you need more attackers. Maybe you need an extra nuker. Whatever it is, play the stage, figure out what you need more of, and try to strike a nice balance between crowd control and having pure damage output, because you can't have one or the other in this stage unless you're just disgustingly over leveled, which I don't expect you to be watching this guide if you are. But that about wraps it up for Manic Dark, one of the more difficult Manic stages compared to the others, mainly because it isn't a base hit stage. Yeah, drop a like if this guide helped you out, subscribe if you're new, join the hashtag Boogle Gang, Discord, all of that down below. If you want to see me using my old guide to beat the stage with much lower level units than this even, you can check out that video down below as well. But yeah, it's been John Boogle, and see ya.